it's party season, right? So restrictions are loosening up. We have our barbecues, we have our events, we'll call them. People want us to come out. People love to get me to start drinking. So what happens when old man Brian starts drinking too much? He wakes up with a hangover. And what does old man Brian need when he has a hangover? Something hearty and delicious, like a corn chowder. We figured if we were gonna make it, we'd wanna show you and we'd wanna take you through the steps of how we use regular day household ingredients and elevate them to give you incredibly delicious restaurant quality style dishes without all the fuss. But this looks good and I can't wait to eat it. But I can't because we have to show you how to make it first. So come on, let's get in the kitchen. We have our usual suspects. We have our fresh herbs, garlic, our big ol' onion. The recipe we use would usually call for 2 onions, but I mean, absurd. Then we have some bell peppers. We're gonna use 4 russet potatoes today that we will peel and dice. We're gonna use a whole pound of bacon that we'll render the fat out and use in the recipe. If you don't want to add bacon to your chowder, that's fine. We will judge you, but you can just substitute this out for a couple of tablespoons of vegetable oil. You'll be good to go. And then the star of the show is going to be corn, which we're gonna show you how to prepare safely, quickly, and then how to build the flavor base or stock out of thereafter. Then of course we have our salt, we have our black pepper, some chicken stock. Again, if you want to keep yours vegetarian or vegan, just sub out your chicken stock for either regular water or vegetable stock. And we're gonna finish the chowder at the end with the half and half and then a little bit of butter. Everything else is just gonna, you'll see it. You'll see it. It'll be nice, fun, and easy. So let's get into it. To set the stage, over the top of our cutting board, we're gonna drop some plastic wrap to make cleaning a little bit down the road much easier and much faster. We'll show you what we mean. So to actually shuck the corn, what you want to do is you want to pinch the husk up towards the top and then peel it straight back towards yourself in one quick motion. Now there are a couple of tricks you can use to actually remove all the fibers, the hairs, threads, silk, whatever you want to call those strands inside of the actual husk itself, such as baking the corn for 10 or 15 minutes before you do this. You can allow it to cool a little bit before you pick it up, but while it's still kind of hot, you can peel it with all of the threads kind of pulling back from the ear. Or you can do the crazy person method and you can grab a toothbrush and get in there and clean it like, you're brushing the corn's teeth, which again is probably a really goofy thing to hear me say, but people actually do it all the time. So if you laid all that plastic wrap down, you kind of set yourself up for what we just did right here, and you can just roll up all of those husks inside of the plastic wrap, and you got yourself a neat little package to carry them in. And by carry them, I mean usually directly over to the garbage can, because we don't actually have a purpose for them at the Kenny house. Now before we dive into peeling our potatoes, we're gonna need to get ourselves a nice big cold bowl of water. The reason for that is we're gonna use the cold water to help prevent the potatoes from oxidizing as we're preparing them. I feel like oxidation has become one of those overused kitchen terms that doesn't really ever get explained. They just hope you know what we're talking about when we bring it up. But nobody ever really goes in depth about what oxidation actually is. Simply put, it's just a chemical reaction that happens as a result of being exposed to oxygen. And that chemical reaction, this enzymic reaction, is what causes foods such as apples, bananas, potatoes, and even avocados to turn brown. But oxidation is telling us more than just a loss of color is occurring. It means you're losing nutrients and flavor, which is lowering the quality of your ingredients and messing things up without us even having a chance to do it ourselves during the actual cooking process. And then going back a second, right? If we're losing nutritional value and we're losing flavor, we're losing 2 of the most, if not the only 2 important reasons we actually eat, which would be because the nutrients that we get from eating food are good for our body. And then because, eating tasty food is fun, right? The better something tastes, like the more inclined you are to eat it. Nobody's ever eaten something going, oh, this is delicious, get this away from me. So in short, what that really means is that if oxidation has taken away those 2 important things from us, then it's public enemy number 1, which is where the bowl of cold water comes in. And the reason we opt for cold water in this instance instead of warm or hot water is because we don't want to start the cooking process prematurely. which might be a weird concept, right? Like, obviously you're not gonna run some hot water over a potato in your sink and in a couple of seconds have a completely cooked through and ready to eat potato. But what you will have is those outer layers will start releasing their starch way before the inside even has the chance to catch up. All right, now we're gonna check out some trend thing T saw on TikTok. And apparently what he saw was you can cut a whole head of garlic in half right down the middle like we're doing here. And then you put them, I guess, flesh side down. And then you bonk the ever-loving bejesus out of that thing with the side of your knife. And according to this trend, if you bonk it like we did a couple of times, you should pick them up and find that everything is out of its case and literally nothing happened. Perfect. Meaning in this week's episode of Fact or Cap, the verdict is straight cap. Now, before we get into mincing our giant pieces of elephant garlic, we're going to take those cloves and just chuck them into the pot we're going to reinforce our stock with later. So just get that in there and get it out the way. With our remaining cloves of garlic, we're going to give them the same treatment that the potatoes got. So we're going to plank them out, turn them into sticks, and then boom, kind of rough chop them, kind of dice them. It's a super charitable interpretation of what I do here. And then after giving it a couple of passes over, just rocking the knife back and forth, we're gonna add a massive pinch of salt, and then we're just gonna press the bejesus out of it between the side of our knife and the board until we can confidently say that we've extracted as much oil out of the garlic and we've pureed as much as we can before just moving it off to the side and getting started on our big ol' onion. Now, we've diced onions on the channels a few times here. We've gone through how to do it, so we're just gonna kind of speed through this one as a little refresher. Start by getting the top of the onion cut off there just a little bit before cutting it in half and then peeling not just the skin off, but the very first layer of the onion as well, because it has a tendency to be very waxy and just unpleasant to eat. Once we have our naked onion, we're going to do our first set of vertical slices on the top there before following through and giving it a nice quick rough dice there. We're not looking for massive pieces of onion. This is going to be a very hearty rustic soup/stew because of the texture we're aiming for, so try to make sure that your onion pieces aren't that much larger than the corn is going to end up being, just so you can kind of fit everything in one spoonful at one go. So there's actually a speed hack for preparing corn that we didn't do in the video, only because we're preparing such a small amount of it. It's not worth dirtying the 2 dishes required to do it. We were just going to do it on the cutting board we've been keeping clean. Now, to do it this way, we're just going to stand it upright on the board and shave very carefully the kernels from the cob. Take your time with this one if you're unfamiliar with doing this. It's not going to take very long, regardless of if you want to try to speed demon your way through it. So just play it safe. Have fun with it. A cool thing to note is if you're trying to get a bunch of roasted kernels or just kernels in general for garnishing a little bit later, try to actually run the knife pretty close to the actual cob, which give you, as you can see on the board, those almost honeycomb-esque designed blocks of corn kernels. Then just rinse and repeat. You're going to end up with a massive pile of corn that you can use for the soup, and you're good to go. But now what do? We have all of these naked corn ears. What do we do with these cobs? Well, we milk them. And the process for milking them just requires you to take the back of your chef's knife and then run it the length of your exposed cob. But the milk, as we're referring to it here, is actually a super starchy liquid that is going to be releasing from the inside of the cob. Once you've collected all of your corn milk, just throw it into the bowl with the rest of your corn kernels, and then we're going to move on to actually reinforcing our chicken stock to make it a corn stock. And do that, we're going to rapid fire it by going in with the garlic, a quarter of that massive onion, all of them naked corn ears, a bunch of thyme, and then 1 tablespoon of dried oregano, as well as the bay leaf from earlier. We're going to bring that up to a simmer, not a boil, just a simmer. And we're just going to let that bad boy go for 15 or 20 minutes to impart as much flavor from the corn ears as possible. And now that we're done with everything else, we get to jump to the fun part. We're going to dice up some of the bacon. And then we did it. We prepped everything that is required to make ourselves a dang old good corn chowder. We're going to do something a little bit different once we're done dicing them up to whatever size you'd like. Instead of transferring them to a bowl and blah, 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 doing all that other stuff, we're actually going to add them to the pot we're going to make our soup in cold. So the cold bottom of the pot and then cold bacon, because we're going to turn this on to a medium lowish heat and render out as much fat from the bacon as possible that we will then use to cook the rest of our vegetables in later. Now this process can probably take maybe, I don't know, 10-15 minutes depending on how low you have it, which will pull a lot of fat out, so we're just going to time lapse it. So boom, it's going to get steamy. You're going to see the bacon go from a pinkish color to kind of gray. And then it's going to start browning a little bit, and you'll see the pot also start to brown with it. And then just, play with it every once in a while so that it doesn't stick to one spot and then burn. And then before you know it, all of your wang jangling and playing around with the spatula will be rewarded with beautifully rendered crispy pieces of awesome smoked bacon, which we will add to a different bowl. We used a slotted spoon here because we want to leave as much fat in the bottom of the pan as possible before dumping in a metric crap ton of corn and onions. This is a dual purpose thing. You can see some of the steam bubbling up on the side there, and that's because as those colder ingredients, when they hit the bottom of the pan, they're going to release a bunch of water into it, which will deglaze it and pick up all of those awesome flavors that we developed from rendering out the bacon. But to the corn, we're actually going to add some spices. We opted in for some dried oregano, another tablespoon, just like we did to the stock. Then just sweat it out for a little bit, get the potatoes back in as well. Then cook those out for just a couple of minutes. Nothing too crazy. We're not going to try to cook the potatoes this way, but it's all right to leave them in there while you strain your now reinforced cornstarch into the pot itself. Once all of our liquid, all of our veg, everything else is getting to know each other, we're going to crank the heat up to, we'll call it a medium high. We're just going to try to take it up to a boil before dropping it immediately down to a simmer. Which actually brings us to a new segment where we wanted to cover a cooking term that we learned in culinary school as well as used pretty frequently in professional kitchens, and that word is called depolage. Simply put, depolage is the act of removing impurities either from your stock or your sauce, and in this case the impurity is going to come in the form of the foam that builds up from cooking the potatoes. Things you might not think about pretty regularly when you're cooking potatoes is that they grow pretty damn deep in the ground, which means that no matter how much we wash them or rinse them or scrub them, we can't always actually get all of the dirt out from inside of the pores. So what might happen as a result of that is as you cook your potatoes and it releases its starch and it forces things out of those cell walls, it can also push those impurities out with it and it'll move them to the top of the soup. And the easiest fix to that is just taking your spoon, ladle, or whatever it is you have, and then just go over the top of your soup that is gently simmering, and then skim just the foam layer off, trying to leave as much of the liquid underneath, and then just carry on doing that however many times it takes. You can leave a little bit here or there, it's not going to ruin too much, but too much of that foam could affect both the texture of your soup, as well as the flavor, and it's just better if you get rid of it now. Do future you a favor and get rid of it now. You can even see as I go through the pot skimming that foam off the top, you can actually see a layer of stock underneath it. It actually begins to look better and better kind of as a finished product without all of those impurities and things like that building up towards the top. Now this same method, the same procedure is used to skim fat off the top of stocks, or fat off the top of sauces you're building, even fat off the top of soups if that's what you're going for. It's a cool little tip or trick that a lot of home cooks that we talk to don't know about, so we wanted to share it with you so you could have a better understanding of how you could apply it to your own home cooking. But that's enough of that nerd shit. Let's get back into the recipe. So we're only going to cook the soup as long as it takes for the potatoes to be easily pierceable with either a knife or a fork. Then we'll remove it from the heat and bring it over to our handy dandy blender. We're going to add just enough to fill the blender about halfway, and we're going to do it pretty slowly and carefully, and it's going to go little by little like this. And oh, we're done. Cool. Okay. And then we're going to add some cream, some cream, some cream, some cream, some dang cream. About 2 cups worth before taking our soup and cream mixture and making it super dizzy in the blender. We have to kind of tease it a little bit by starting it on the lowest possible setting, and then we're going to jack up the speed little by little before landing on the highest possible speed and just letting it go until it makes a nice puree, to which we are going to immediately add back into the soup slowly and whisking to avoid any lumps, clumps, or just disgusting textures. We forgot to add the butter into the blender, so we're just gonna mix it in now. No harm, no foul. But you should have added that to the blender, just like we should have. And then we're gonna add our bacon back in, about 3/4 of what we used, so that we can use the rest for garnish. And then we're gonna drop some fresh thyme flowers in, because we want that flavor to be very potent. And if you cook them inside of the soup themselves, you're not gonna get that strong fresh flavor. Then for garnish, we just blasted a couple of red peppers with the blowtorch that we keep, our kitchen torch. And then we threw them in a bowl, sealed them with plastic wrap to let them steam. Dragged all the skins off them with a paper towel. And then we're just gonna hit it with a quick little dice. Then let's get ready for the fun part, the plating. The plating is always the most fun part. I don't care what anybody said. So we're gonna get a couple of pretty hearty ladlefuls into a bowl before dropping some of our roasted corn, which I guess we don't have any footage of. We're gonna drop around some of our roasted red pepper, just scatter it a little bit. We're gonna go in with some of the bacon. All right, a little bit more bacon, who we kidding? Bacon's pretty good. And then we're gonna top with some chopped chives. Boom. And just like that, you're left with a bowl of perfect corn chowder. Was that so bad? Probably not. It might have been a couple more steps than you're used to when making food at home, but it's all gonna be worth it. It's all gonna pay off in the end, and you're really gonna enjoy this stuff. My favorite part about this recipe isn't so much the fact that we get to eat it now and enjoy it, this beautiful bowl of chowder, is actually in a couple of days here, or over the next few days, I should say, this is only going to become better and better. Not an exaggeration, we make it pretty regularly. After the 2 or 3 day threshold with the bacon and the corn and the potatoes and your onions just hanging out together, you can almost use it like gravy in certain instances. Maybe we don't include that. We don't want to out ourselves as the world's fattest. But yeah, let's do a first, because I need this. So let's see, how do we even attack this? Let's destroy it. Get a little bit of everything. And then slide it in, because I don't want to make a huge mess. But, salute. That's so good. Give me a second. That's so good. So, first and foremost, you get a really big punch from the actual smoky bacon. Let me back that up, because I had something in my mouth. On the lip. First and foremost, you get a huge punch from the smoky bacon, followed by the nice fresh contrast of the corn, as well as the corn which has been in the soup and stewed down a bit, giving it an almost creamed corn texture. And then my name is Brian Michael. I can't say enough about potatoes. Potatoes are fantastic. It's just it's in our blood to enjoy those things. And then the roasted red pepper is just, it's like a nice freshness that helps punch through the thick richness of just the cream and the half and half that we ended up using. So this is spectacular. You should make this. You need to make this. And I'm gonna get back to it. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for cooking with us. And as always, if you liked what we did, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, all that stuff you can support us with for free. And then we'll see you in the next one. Be good, y'all.